So one of the things I get asked about a lot is how to read food labels, particularly in relation to sugar content. Now, it's estimated that sugar is added to 75% of all foods you'll find in the supermarket. So we as consumers need to get sugar savvy. And that starts with learning how to read food labels. And it's much easier than you think once you follow a few simple guidelines. So let's start with the basics. Where does sugar appear on a food label? So if I take this box of granola bars, for example, sugar is always listed under carbohydrates. So you'll see here carbohydrates, of which sugar's 8 grams per serve, which means that this granola bar contains 8 grams of sugar. Now, I find that grams mean absolutely nothing to people. So I'm going to teach you a simple trick to help you visualize that. A really useful thing to remember is that 1 teaspoon of sugar weighs 4 grams. So, for example, we know from looking at the food label that this granola bar contains 8 grams of sugar. So if we use our little teaspoon equation, we know that that contains 2 teaspoons of sugar. And I find when you think and visualize sugar content in teaspoons, it's a lot easier to kind of put it into context, and then at least you can make an informed choice. For optimal health, the World Health Organization recommends we consume no more than 6 teaspoons of free sugars in a day. Now, what are free sugars? Free sugars is any type of sugar that's added to a food by the food manufacturer, the cook, or the consumer, as well as sugars found naturally in fruit juices, fruit concentrates and squashes, honeys, and syrups. What free sugars doesn't include is naturally occurring sugars found in dairy products like milk, for example, grains, beans, nuts, and whole fruit and vegetables. So should I cut fruit from my diet if I'm trying to reduce my sugar intake? This is something I get asked about a lot, and the answer is no. We should still all be eating whole fruits as part of our 5 a day. Now, if you do want to reduce your sugar intake, then it probably would be best to eat more whole fruits as opposed to fruit juices. And the reason being is that our bodies are well able to handle the amount of naturally occurring sugars in the form of fructose found in a whole piece of fruit. But if you take a large glass of orange juice, for example, that probably contains about 4 pieces of fruit in it. So naturally, you're going to get 4 times the amount of sugar, which our bodies are less able to handle because it raises your blood sugar level higher. So what constitutes a high or a low sugar content? A good rule of thumb is to remember that 5 grams or less per 100 grams is considered a low sugar content, and 15 grams or above per 100 gram is considered a high sugar content. If you're looking at the sugar content on a food label, it's important to know that not all of what you see is added sugar. In some cases, there's a combination of naturally occurring sugars and added sugar. And dairy is a really good example of this. So for example, if we took this natural yogurt here, looking at the label, I can see that there's 4.3 grams of sugar per 100 gram. However, if I look at the ingredients list, there's no sugar added whatsoever. So we know that those 4.3 grams are naturally occurring sugars in the form of lactose, which we don't need to be overly concerned about. On the flip side, this same brand of vanilla flavoured yogurt contains 12 grams of sugar per 100 gram, which is almost 3 times that of the natural yogurt. Why? Because if we look at the ingredients list here, we will see that there is sugar added in this case. So what we have here is a combination of naturally occurring sugars with lots of added sugar on top. One thing that really confuses people is that food labels often list the nutritional content in 2 ways, per serving and per 100 gram. So which do you go for if you're trying to calculate your sugar content? Well, both can be useful in different ways. The per serving simply shows you how much sugar is contained in a serving of a food. So for example, 1 biscuit or 1 bowl of cereal. But if you're trying to compare 2 food products, that's where your per 100 gram can be useful, particularly if the serving sizes are not the same weight. So for example, this particular granola lists its serving size as 50 grams and this one lists its serving size as 45 grams. So if you want to compare it like with like, compare them per 100 gram. Incidentally, this one contains just over 9 grams of sugar per 100 gram. This one just over 22 grams of sugar per 100 gram, more than double the amount. So you can see how it really pays to check the food labels, and even sometimes making simple swaps can help you dramatically reduce your sugar intake. Saying that, it's important to remember that we only really need to check food labels in relation to processed and packaged foods. If we stick to natural whole foods as much as possible, we know exactly what we're getting without having to fuss over food labels.